All right, there we go. We are live. What's going on, everybody? Back once again with a new video, Conscious Approach. Thank you for joining us as usual. My name is JV Wins, joined by my homeboy Dogon SS for another garden variety social commentary on a week's worth of interesting topics. Before we get started with this week's video, man, like always, I wanted to say if you appreciate the commentary on this channel, if you like what we have to say, or if you don't like what we say, but you want to let us know, man, go ahead and like the button, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, man, share the video, comment wherever you see fit. We certainly appreciate everybody supporting logical content, and this week is no exception to that rule. So, join the community. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It comes at no cost to you, and you're certainly helping to get our stuff out there to a broader audience because we do like what we got to say. So it would behoove more people to hear what we have to say, I think. So with that out of the way, man, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it, man. First topic that we are going to get into is a video that I ran across by a relationship coach. Her name is Asia Elaine. She's real big throughout the social circle, the social media world. She posts a lot of videos on TikTok, Instagram. I think she's on Twitter too. She pretty much has the same. She has the same handle for all of her profiles. I'll go ahead and put that in the description of this video so that you can take a look at it for yourself. But again, her name is Asia Elaine, and she is a dating and relationship coach. And she put a video out recently explaining the 4 red flags that men run into. And when men run into those red flags, they usually opt to go their own way and not sort of explore the idea or the option of getting into a relationship with any woman who exhibits any one or several even of these red flags. So it doesn't really take one. One red flag is usually enough, but there are 4 of these. So you might have 1, 2, 3, and in the most severe of cases, you might have all 4. But she's suggesting that these are the 4 red flags that when men pay attention to, they run for the hills. So we'll listen to what she has to say, and then we'll comment afterwards.
Number 1, non-reciprocal energy. You hear a lot of women in the dating market saying when the right man comes along, you will not have to try. And although it's true that you won't have to try too hard, there's a difference between not trying too hard and not trying at all. You don't have to be thirsty. You don't have to come off desperate, but no man wants to be pursuing a woman that they feel is not giving them the same kind of energy in return. Number 2, unrealistic financial expectations. Somewhere in the modern dating market, we have communicated to women that it is totally acceptable to expect a man to pay for their hair or their nails for a first date, or to even go as far as to ask a man they barely even know to help them with their bills. Feeling entitled to lavish treatment or financial assistance from a man that you barely even know that's still trying to get to know you is an extremely unrealistic expectation. And social media has done a really bad job of making modern women think that that behavior is normal. Let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting a man who's financially solid, but no man wants to feel like they're your walking ATM. Number 3, immaturity and uncontrolled emotions. Immaturity, uncontrolled emotions, acting crazy, all of that has been rebranded recently as being toxic. And there are a lot of social media channels out there that actually glamorize being toxic and encourage women to engage in this kind of behavior. When good men get a sense of that behavior, you lashing out, blocking their number, cursing them out, they either just stop taking you seriously from that point forward, or they don't tolerate it altogether. Because you're coming across to him more so like a child who's throwing a temper tantrum than you are a woman who wants to be taken seriously as an adult. Number 4, probably the most controversial one of all, being too masculine. A lot of women will shy away from being feminine now because of the negative connotation that's associated with that in modern society. Whether you like it or not, the reality is that men like feminine women. Now, this is the part of the story where a lot of women will say, well, it takes the right man to bring out that feminine energy. Although I do think that there are some points of that are true, overall, I don't really agree with that. I think that as a woman, you either embrace your feminine energy and you walk in that, or you just haven't tapped into it. There are so many women in the modern dating market who have hardened themselves to steal because of the negative experiences that they've had with men. Blocking your feminine energy is often a defense mechanism for a lot of women so that they don't get hurt in the future. But don't let the experiences of the past turn you bitter. The reality is, ladies, that there are 2 sides to every coin. If we're going to talk about the bad traits of men, we also have to acknowledge and take accountability for the bad traits we have in ourselves.
All right. Wow. So there you go. Non-reciprocal energy, masculinity, unrealistic financial expectations, and uncontrolled emotions. Those were the four red flags. Um, so I feel like she's my spirit animal.
Yeah.
I feel like she's all. I feel like she's a spirit animal for most mature grown men who handle their business. I don't think that I am going beyond the pale by saying that. So what were your initial reactions to Asia Elaine's articulation of those four red flags?
Initially, just watching what she had to say and just taking it all in. Yeah, I feel like women have heard this before, so, uh, but I also, and they've also heard it from other women. But I feel like every woman who says it is just another army and a soldiers, army, another soldier in the army to help like change this mentality that's been going on with modern women. So I greatly appreciate her efforts. Hopefully there are people that are listening to this, females that are listening to this, but the ones that actually pick up that modern woman logic and carry it out to its fullest potential, they don't want to hear this type of message. They've heard it before. And just because there's some other woman who's saying it now, dating coach or not, they're still going to do what they do because uh, it's just how they see the world. It's how they perceive the world. So I would like to be optimistic and say that women are taking heed to this. Some that are on the fringes, but they were on the fringe. The ones that are actually doing this out here, slam dunking on dudes and carrying out their execution, they're getting too much out of this lifestyle. So they wouldn't bother to change it, I would say. So initially, that's my thoughts on this. I feel like she's 100% right. How about yourself, bro? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'm with that. I think she's 100% correct, but there like you, and I think I gathered this from what you just said. There is a cynical part of me that says the people who are in most need to be receptive to this don't care. Like the so like the women out there who are in most need to heed this type of messaging don't care. And like, yeah, I think they've heard this a lot. I think they've heard a lot. There are a lot of counter messages going on the internet, in social media world, in podcast world, with a lot of women and men who are parroting this kind of speech. So you have to, it stands to reason that a lot of women who don't operate like this have heard it, yet they continue to operate this way. So I really don't think they care. That's the cynical part of me, is I kind of think they don't care. But at the same time, those same women who don't care, who operate their lives like this, basically who basically look at relationships from a transactional perspective, those will be the same. And this is the only reason why I say, even though they don't care, they need to learn how to care. And I'm only saying this because of what they say. Those same women will then turn around and talk about how they want to be married, but have thus far been unsuccessful. Or they'll talk about how they want a good relationship or want to find a good guy, but have thus far been unsuccessful. Or they'll talk about how they want to be in a relationship, but guys cheat on them. And so, you know, if you keep running into this same kind of resistance, then at some point you're going to have to undergo a paradigm shift. And I guess optimistically, the more you encounter this kind of counter speech, maybe there's a higher likelihood that that a few of them, not all of them, but maybe a few of them can undergo a paradigm shift. And that's the only
Mhm.
reason why there is an optimistic part about this for me, because despite how so many of them kind of, execute dating from a masculine perspective and kind of view it transactionally, they'll be the
Mhm.
same ones who turn around and say all the right things, right? They'll say all the stuff that they think they need to say to try and convince themselves that they are somebody whom they actually aren't, which is, oh, I do want the husband, and I do want the family, and I do want this, and I do want that, but your actions and behavior suggest otherwise. So um that's pretty much, why I feel like this is worth talking about. Because yeah, there's a lot of them who don't care and who aren't receptive, but they say all the right things. So maybe the fact that they're saying all the right things is coming from some place in the deep recesses of their brain that's telling them, hey, at some point you might want to, switch your paradigm up. For their sake, I just hope that they are still enough in their physical prime and exhibit all the qualities that most men desire, which is like, women who are physically attractive and childless primarily. I hope that they're still in that state of their life when they decide to kind of switch things up. If there is a small percentage of them who do decide, I want to switch things up. But overall, I would agree, cynically speaking, the ones who do need to hear this the most don't care, and they're going to keep doing what they're doing. And the ones who don't need to hear it, it's irrelevant to them anyway, because most of those women are in relationships and doing good already. So what difference does it make, right? Um, the one thing that I did want to touch on though is there's one of these red flags in particular that I encountered over and over and over and over again. And I continue to encounter it. And I, for the life of me, can't understand how to crack the Rubik's Cube on this. And that's the first one that she mentioned, which is non reciprocated energy. Like, if you hang around enough guys who are slaves to vagina, who just don't have any kind of moral code or no kind of principled aspect of their personality or who they are as men, they'll tell you that non-reciprocated energy is just a part of the program. Like, they'll tell you women are supposed to do this. You're supposed to just keep going at them and keep going at them and asserting yourself, essentially whittling them down until they just bend the knee and you're able to sort of conquer them via submission. If you hang around enough guys who are like that, who are just, and I'll use the word, if you hang around enough simpish guys who have that kind of mentality, they'll have you believing that that is the order of operations. And so, like, throughout, doing this whole thing out here in this modern dating world, I have encountered non reciprocated energy so much that I've lost count. I've lost count of how often I've encountered this. And I've often said, like, I don't understand why women do this. Um, I'm not saying that you need to come to me, and I'm not saying that you need to be the aggressor and just make it easy and lay it all out on a silver platter. All I've ever asked is that I deal with women who are interested and that they reciprocate my energy. But far too often, what I've run into and what I think a lot of guys run into nowadays is this game where essentially you're gambling. It's a complete and utter gamble, and you're oftentimes encountering women who can feign interest, and they give you their number or they'll give you some contact information, but in actuality they have no interest whatsoever. And so when you try to establish any sort of contact or communication and they proceed to not be receptive or not respond, or if they do respond, it's very spotty, and it sets a tone of indifference. You're left wondering what's the point of continuing. And so a guy like me, what I've done is I've adopted a rule that at the first sign of apathy or indifference, I'm out the door and I'm walking the other way. And I think that more guys need to incorporate that into their strategy, because I think that far too many guys encounter non reciprocated energy and think that that's something that's okay and appropriate. They think that it's okay for you as a guy to text a girl and her wait 7 or 8 hours before she texts you back. And then even when she texts you back, it's short. It's a short response, maybe 1 or 2 words, and she's making no effort in any kind of way to keep the conversation going, to try and establish some kind of ongoing dialogue. And and a lot of guys think that that's normal and par for the course. And so what they do is just they keep lowering their dignity, their self-respect. They keep lowering their principles and their standards by continuing to contact these women who don't give a shit about them, who are at the very least indifferent towards the prospect of getting to know you in any kind of way. So what they're getting from that exchange is the affirmation of being able to communicate with you, or rather, they're getting in exchange the affirmation of being able to have you hit them up all day, every day. And then they're not they're not being required to reciprocate that. So they are receiving a one-way reward in which they get the attention from you, but don't have to reciprocate that. And after about 2, 3 weeks or a month of you trying to actually hang out with this girl, you finally realize that it's not going to happen. And so then at that point, when you know there is no hope, you move on to the next potential situation. And I think that it's incumbent upon more guys to understand and realize that at the moment when they are encountering it, realize that there is a high likelihood that this is not going to change, and to just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just move on and try to meet somebody else. At the very least, a baseline requirement for all men should be reciprocated energy. I'll tell guys, I'll tell a lot of guys out there who don't hear this enough, dude, you're worth more than that. So, like, if you are texting a girl and she is not texting you back for hours and the response is short, so it's up to you to do all the legwork to maintain communication because she's making no effort to do it, she's not interested. She's indifferent. She's apathetic towards the situation. So move on. Do not give her that affirmation. If every single day you're the only one who's saying, hey, what's up? Or hey, how you doing? Or hey, how did your day go? If you're the only one establishing any communication at all throughout this exchange, that's apathy and indifference. So move it along. Go somewhere else. When you're encountering these things, understand what it means and understand the importance of maintaining your principles and walking away. Because like Asia Elaine pointed out in that clip, it is indeed a red flag. And that's not to get into the other 3 red flags. I just think that more often than not, non-reciprocated energy is the first red flag that most men run into. And you're doing this thing like women do. Women have incorporated a strategy in which they do certain things mechanically because they feel as though it's protocol. So they'll give you their number or whatever weird new human stuff that women do nowadays, giving you their Instagrams or their Snapchats. I don't get into that. If it's not a phone number, I'm out the door right away. I don't do that weirdo new human stuff. But these days, these women doing weirdo new human stuff like, oh, I'll give you my Snap, or I'll give you my Instagram, or I guess now they probably do, I'll give you my TikTok. Or if there's still enough girls out there who will give out their number, understand that for a large percentage of these women, they do this stuff mechanically. There's no indication whatsoever that there's interest there. And when you proceed to try and actually maintain communication with them, you realize, oh, she's indifferent towards me as a human being or my existence, period. So I just think that when men encounter that, more men, when we encounter that, we have to understand the importance of going the other way. And I've encountered this a lot. Every guy needs to have a baseline requirement of a reciprocation of energy. It does not mean that she needs to take her clothes off the first night. It don't mean that you need to be in her apartment smashing the first night. It don't mean none of that. It don't mean that y'all got to go on a date and be making out the first day or in 2 days. But there at least needs to be a reciprocation of energy. Throughout the course of any week, she needs to be the first one to say, hey, what's up? How you doing? If you're the only one doing that, it means that you're a rotational piece and she is prioritizing communication with other men over you. Yeah. And if you're not the guy who's maintaining priority, find another girl who will prioritize you. But there's just too many guys who don't heed that. And they look at this and they've been brainwashed by this modern dating protocol, weirdo world to believe that non-reciprocated energy is normal and I should just play that game. And I'll be the first one to stand here and tell men everywhere, that's not a game that you got to play. So I appreciate that video and I appreciate what she had to say because I'm 100% in favor of all 4 of those red flags. But personalizing this, because I've experienced one of those in particular more so than the others, that non-reciprocated energy thing, that to me is a big deal and more guys need to pay attention to that.
Yeah, hey, well said, all of that. But I'm pretty sure you didn't, but just yesterday I was watching Boosie on Drink Champs. That was 3 hours. I couldn't do a whole 3 hours of that. But he had said something because he had said something, and then DJ FN, I think that's his name, he had said, oh, it's social media. And then Boosie just took it and then he was just running with it like social media has ruined everything. And it's done ruined marriage. And I had said this before in the previous pods where, those marriages that are still going on to this day, that's been going on for 40 and 50 years. Well, the only reason why those things has been going on for as long as they has is that there was no social media in those days. And if there was a Tinder or Instagram or something like that back in the 60s, right? You know what I'm saying? Grandpa, whoever, would have been liking animes pictures, Mary Jo's pictures, Gertrude's pictures. And so they would have been liking all of those things. He would have seen that, grandma, whoever, Grandma Betsy, there's badder women out there than Grandma Betsy. And then he done left her. Or he's thirsting in the streets, you know what I'm saying, chasing, a woman because she's showing her ankle. And so times have drastically changed. People have way too many options at their disposal. And so just what you just mentioned there for the first red flag, like you said, well, she's not prioritizing you because she probably has her own Rolodex of dudes that she would rather talk to, or she just wants to just keep her fingers busy, and you're just one of the guys that keeps her fingers busy while she just texts. She has her affections for whatever dude, for whatever reason. He's probably a scumbag, because if you actually approach or talk to her in the adequate way, you're too boring, you're too lame, and you need to have a little bit more spice and excitement in this conversation, And so what is she looking for? Low key, the one that's always being one word, being rude. She's looking for rude right back. And if you're being rude right back, you're not being in your normal, traditional, standard frame. You got to step into this weird thought box and then talk to her like a whore. That's the only reason why that's the only way she would respond to you over this guy, because you're being toxic to her. That's the goofy stuff that we've got going on right now. She mentioned that the immaturity one ties into the first one. The immaturity one that for the third one, that ties into the last one. Literally, immaturity ties into all of the red flags, because they have these problems that they, from being exposed to way too much stimuli. And so now they have a convoluted view of what masculinity really is, or what masculinity should really be, much like men who have a convoluted view of what masculinity really is and what it really should be. Because at least in my generation, I was growing up and I heard that the masculine of masculine men got to be out here slaying every damn thing. And he has to have sex with XYZ type of women in order to be considered, head honcho. And if he's not out here slaying all of these whores, then he ain't worth nothing. So what does Doe do? Yeah, I'm about to say my real name. Y'all probably already. What does Doe do? He goes out there and he says, "Well, I must become a whore myself. I must be whore myself." So I go out there and try to achieve whoredom. And when I'm out here talking to these scandalous women, I realize that they want disrespect, not the real ones. Not the real women, the real women that actually want something solid. The ones that are confused, much like me, they want to be disrespected. They don't want to be treated in the traditional type of format. They want to be treated just like a number. And so if I were treating them like a number, like I got other ones on the team and I'm just slaying, she's just one of the many that I'm slaying out. She loves it. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. So if you do say good morning, how are you? That's probably a little too nice for her.
Yeah.
She wants, I don't know what she wants. Hey, bitch. Hey, bitch, good morning. Good morning.
No, you said good morning. You can't. You said good morning. You got to take that part out. It's just hey, bitch.
No, but hey, bitch. And who you calling a bitch? Man, their conversations got rolling now. Now you done got her attention. Yeah. So
or just I mean, if you start off the conversation with what you got going on, airing nails, and then you just cash app it, then that's pretty much what the expectation is.
I mean, well, if that's what we're doing, if we're just doing prostitution, right? If we're just doing prostitution, there's cheaper rates. So you don't have to go out there and be paying, women to what are you doing? You're literally, so you meet women in the streets. and we'll cover this later with that last topic because that last one is
Yeah.
outlandish. But I'll stick
Yeah.
on this.
Stay tuned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll stick with this one here. But what? So I've encountered all flags, of course. If you're a male and you've been on the dating scene, of course you've encountered them all right? But of course, yeah, I'm at this part of my life and this stage of my life where, yeah, I've just had enough of it, honestly. And much like how you say, if they're out here not displaying interest because whatever, I'm just one of the many guys that trying to text her or call her or take her somewhere or whatever. If I feel like I'm that guy, well, I don't want to play. I don't want to play. The last few situationships type of situations that I was in, yeah, I knew I was a rotational piece. Didn't care, I was just like, all right, well, whatever. Then eventually they're like, hey, I want this to be a thing, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just rolling with it. And then but eventually you gotta chase the other dudes off. And I said, well, I'm not doing that anymore either. Like, I'm not chasing any dudes off. I'm not going to be, hey, I'm not that I was saying this, but basically saying this, like, hey, I'm the only guy here. So if you want to be, if we're going to be doing all of this stuff, you can't be doing all that extra stuff. At that point, I realized that it's like a street cat. It comes around only when it wants its milk. It comes to your door. You let it in for a few seconds, and it's back out there on the street. And that's not your cat. It has several houses that it does it to. And so I had to realize that once that cat comes to my door, scratching and clawing on my door, it was at my door. It wanted me. No, it wants a lot of stuff. And you're just an experience that it wants to experience. It wants to come in and sniff around, hey, rub up on your leg for a few seconds, and it's out of there. And, see it in the next few days when it decides to come back. Mm-hmm. And that's what dating has become. Mm-hmm. Everybody out here getting in a situationship after situationship, and that's a new word. They just came up with that. And now I'm just finding myself in these things.
Yeah.
Where people are just, hey, well, we talking now. Well, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. we talking. So this is what's going on in the dating arena. She called it out. But I'm telling you right now, I don't know how many women out here are not displaying at least one of these flags, and they call themselves dating. It's really gone on. This is taking on a large percentage of our population out here.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. If you got the 4-pack, I feel sorry for you, bro. I done had at least 3 of the 4. So hey, don't I done had the 3 of the 4 before. So it is what it is, man. But now I'm at this point in my life where if I decide to play some type of game, I've realized that I'm playing a game. But the wool being pulled over my eyes about this stuff, I think it's a little too much information. I think I'd have been through a little too much to go through this blindly. So yeah, fellas and ladies, if y'all find yourselves out here in the dating arena and you're experiencing fatigue, there are good people out there that don't play these games. Just hold firm and hold out, because you don't have to sign up for this stuff. Not everybody's out here doing this. There's a lot of them, but not everybody.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, because we've said often that this represents like the minority of the population, and that there's actually more people who are normal, I guess. But I think at a certain point, we're going to have to really analyze whether that's actually still true. Honestly, like I think as times move along, we're legitimately going to have to assess whether this type of dynamic has truly become the majority. Because based on my experience and what I've seen, it's becoming the majority.
Well, I would say that the extreme cases, the minority. But there's so many people that are fringed out.
Bro. But yeah, even fringe. But I just think that fringe is more likely to be on one side or the other. Like if we were talking about a fringe line, and one side of that line is dysfunctionality, and the other side of that line is, non-dysfunctionality. I think the majority of the fringe even is on closer to the line, it's closer on the side of the line that is dysfunctionality,
Yeah, I agree.
because it's a generational thing and it's a stimuli thing. Like you said, it's exposure to messages and stimuli. Like I've often said, um, I try not to blame social media for everything, but facts are facts. So I can't
Yeah,
help but
bro.
express the way I can't help but call it how I see it. And
Hmm.
like, one of the things that's really caused women to develop this weird delusions of like this delusional sense of grandeur when it comes to what they're entitled to or what they deserve is because they have the ability to juxtapose what they have to someone who they know directly. So like I think I said a few pods ago, it's one thing for a girl from around the way to follow a celebrity on Instagram, and basically there's that imaginary line where you say, that would be cool, but that's a celebrity, she's rich and famous, I can understand why that's
Hmm.
not my reality. But when you have a girl who you work with, or a girl who you grew up with, or a girl who who's posting pics and videos on her social of her boyfriend taking her on trips halfway around the world, well, now it becomes a thing that you can personalize because you know this person on a personal level. And
Hmm.
so you can extrapolate that to your own reality and say, she's doing it, I should be doing that too. So that's one of the subtle things that social media has done to fundamentally change this thing. But moreover, I'll just say, like, generally speaking, this is why I kind of communicate to men when it comes to this red flag stuff, because I do believe in the trickle down effect. And I think that the more, and again, whether it's realistic at this point because we're too far gone and we're fully entrenched in modern dating relationship dynamic world, that
Hmm.
very well could be the case. But if there is some optimism to be had from this, my belief in the trickle down effect stipulates that if more women are exposed to men who maintain their principles, then maybe more women will learn how to maintain more reasonable expectations, or at the very least, understand the importance of doing right by, you know, everybody, men and women, but just doing right by everybody throughout the course of this entire relationship thing. Like if it's a guy who you're not interested in, don't give your number out. Don't do things like that mechanically. Only give your time and energy into guys that you're interested in, because that guy is going to thirst after you for weeks and months because he thinks that you're interested before he finally develops enough gumption to walk his own way. And in the midst of him doing that, he's created a monster.
So
And
check.
so I
Go ahead.
think the more monsters that we have walking around in these streets, the worse off we are.
Right.
So all of these red flags are applicable, but some of them can sort of, you can catch it. It's like when you get sick and you catch like it's like catching cancer early. Cancer is earlier to treat. I mean, cancer is easier to treat when it's caught very early before it, metastasizes and spreads. And like it's the same thing with this. Like some people on the fringes, men and women, whatever you want to say,
Hmm.
can be brought back to doing things more reasonably if they're caught early enough, or if the interaction is caught early enough. So right
Agreed.
away, if you get scores of women realizing I can't get my affirmation from this guy because he can already tell that I'm not interested, maybe I need to switch up how I do things. I think all of that can help. But as it stands right now, there's just, as I've said often, there's just a lot of relationship anarchy. A lot of this stuff is rooted in transactions, and those red flags are just running rampant. And so this is what you're going to get as a result.
I mean, I agree with all of that, and so the dynamics is things that I pay attention to. So I had a lot of homegirls at jobs and stuff, and I'll just be talking to them about whatever, you know, and they'll be telling me, genuinely like the reports of dudes that they're talking to or whatever. Some guys were they, and I've heard it all. Some women say, "Hey, I've given ugly dudes a chance. He still cheated on me. I've given fat people a chance. They still cheated on me. I've given broke people a chance. They still cheated on me." And then once they start going down this list, this laundry list of dudes, of all types of dudes, good guys, air quotes, did me dirty, cheated on me. And so once they have this laundry list of guys of where they just had enough, there's this part, I'm pretty sure, like she had mentioned, as far as the masculine women at least, there's a defense mechanism that kicks into gear where they go, all right, bro, whatever, what do you want? What you after? And so they've become what people call jaded. And then they start to defend themselves. If you just trying to extract something from me, well, I'm going to extract something from you kind of mentality. And so there's a lot of hurt people out here dating, hurting everybody. I can speak for myself as a dude. If I were fat, if I were broke, if I were ugly, if I were any of these things that these guys were out here cheating and doing all this crazy stuff, I'm pretty sure all of these guys watch pornography. And a lot of these guys that are out here right now are trying to exercise pornographic fantasies. So they don't care if they have themselves a woman at the house or whatever. They're going to go out here and try to do stuff. And so what we do have, at least from the male side of this, is that there's a lot of guys that are out here feeding into this. Like you said, the guys that don't have any morals or integrity, they're out here, blah, blah, blah. Like there's guys out here that are not solid in their ways, out here mucking it up. And they're creating this economy of women that are unsuitable now. Now, I'm not blaming strictly men, but I'm just bringing up the men's aspect, the men's role that they play into this stuff. And there's guys out here that have done women wrong. And there's women out here that have had enough and they go their own way. And what's their own way? Extracting and getting transactional relationships. And so what we have out here is a lot of hurting people. And like how you mentioned, if there's people on the fringe, because I would say that those people who've given people genuine chances and got hurt and starting to do this out of defense are fringe people who are going over onto the wrong side. And so there's a lot of people who are filling this pool because, there's so many people out here that are sexually imbalanced. And people's sexual imbalance has been targeted since they were children. And so when you cut on a TV now and you see what kids are watching now, like this was years ago when my nieces and nephews was watching Disney Channel and all this other stuff. And, these kids got girlfriends and boyfriends and, this and that going on and Disney Channel and, young people, kids stuff, And so there's these children are exposed to so much now at a young age, coming from all of this stuff that from our generation plus that they don't know, they don't have a solid standard. I'll tell you this, my niece, 12 years old, and shows me her civics teacher's Instagram page. And I was like, how you get an Instagram page? Well, she put it on her PowerPoint. And so on this woman's the civics teacher, middle school, busting it wide open on a boat with some shimmy sham on, see-through, and you can see her thumb, busting it wide open on a boat. On her Instagram page, she has a link to her OnlyFans. Now, the kids in class, everybody's seen it now. And so my niece tells me, yeah, she was on there on her OnlyFans page moaning. And I'm like, what? After I asked for the link, I then told her, I said, hey, what is going on here? But I said, now we're going to have a real conversation because apparently her and her 17-year-old sister know about OnlyFans. And they was like, well, not everything on OnlyFans is crazy. You can just show your feet. And I'm like, so just show your feet. So y'all know this now. I said, where are y'all getting this from? The kids in school. TikTok. And so these are the new 12-year-olds. Hell, the 10-year-olds probably know this crap by now. Imagine what happens to these kids when they get grown up and they hit the dating market and they didn't have any parents or anybody else around them that can go, hey, there's a difference. There's a reality, and then there's that crazy stuff. There's going to be people out here that are just doing anything. And so now, when I say that people's their sexual energy is being targeted, that's what I mean. And so this is the new form of it with OnlyFans and all this other stuff, but our generation had its own. And so now all of these people are grown up in the dating market, and it's a cesspool of people who don't know how to really swim. dragging each other down, and everybody's drowning and trying to figure out why, because they're sexually confused, both males and females. And so I could sit here and point the finger at women, uh, because I would, because I'm a man and I dated some of these red flags. But I would say that this is on both sides of the spectrum, mucking up the pool, and it's an ugly game, and nobody's out there winning.
Yeah, I hear that. That has not been my experience. I'll take your word for it. In my experience, I've just run into women who are well adjusted, but they have a particular idea in mind of the kind of guy that they're after,
And
and
what
so
kind of
they
guy
will
is
be.
that? And what kind of guy is that, bro?
I don't know. It just wasn't
Okay,
me. That's all I
right.
can
And
tell
so,
you.
so how well adjusted are they if you're being a balanced man being balanced?
I'm not suggesting that my balance or lack thereof is indicative of their balance or lack thereof. I just consider myself to be what, I just consider myself to be what otherwise would be desirable if it wasn't for unrealistic expectations.
And where do they
The
getting these
point that I'm,
unrealistic? Where are they getting these unrealistic expectations from if they're balanced?
I never said they were. I never
You
said they
said,
were balanced. I said they were well adjusted enough.
how are they well
I said they were
adjusted
well
enough?
they're well adjusted enough because they didn't grow up being desensitized by pornography and pornographic images or getting
Not porn,
repeatedly
not
cheated
porn,
on by
not,
men.
not porn.
No, no, but what I'm saying is
Mhm.
using the what you brought up, the examples that you brought up, by well adjusted, I mean they did not grow up being desensitized and having their sexuality warped by excessive imagery or furthermore being cheated on repeatedly by guys. It's the messaging that is basically told them
From
this is
where?
what I like and this is what I'm after. Now, again, I'm not necessarily trying to pinpoint the messaging, but what I
Mhm.
am trying to say is I think it is the responsibility of men to detect red flags, in particular, non reciprocated energy, and understand that when you encounter that, that it is not a worthwhile investment of your time and energy to pursue that situation. Like it's simple. Like I'm not like you kind of getting a little deeper into it than I am. And so that's all I'm saying. Like I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm just looking at it on the surface level. Regardless of whatever their history is or what their circumstances or environments are, regardless of any of that. I've
Mhm.
talked to a lot of guys who are like me. Like we all have our vices. It is what it is. But I didn't necessarily come up thinking that it is customary for me to be slaying women one after another all the time. Now, did I date multiple women simultaneously? Sure, I did. But I don't necessarily think I approached it from a toxic standpoint in which I was purposefully trying to have multiple sexual partners at the same time because I felt like that was the way for me to exercise my masculinity, so to speak. So what I'm saying is I encounter a lot of guys who come from a similar walk of life like that. And what they're encountering at the very beginning of trying to meet women is women who, for one reason or another, I'm not trying to speculate what the reason is, but whatever the reason is, one way or another, they're encountering women who are indifferent towards whether they even want to get to know you as a person or not. They're apathetic towards you as a human being. They're showing a level of disinterest that means she doesn't care about getting to know you. So when you encounter that, when you encounter non reciprocated energy, your responsibility as a guy is to say, she's not reciprocating my energy. Let me go ahead and dust myself off and go about the business of trying to meet another woman who might reciprocate my energy because she is not going to show indifference. That's all I was saying by that. So,
Right.
and I'm not like all of it goes hand in hand, but and we can go, I mean, we've gone on pretty long already with this, but just on a surface level, a lot of guys, and I know this because I talk to them a lot. We have these conversations. Like a lot of guys are out here just trying to like hang out and have dates and normal conversations and do normal stuff. So they're not coming at it particularly from a toxic perspective, but at the same time, they're meeting women who are just like they're literally one after another. They're meeting women who don't care,
And
who just
that's
don't care,
and the
who
reason
don't
they don't care,
reciprocate.
and the reason they don't care, and this is what I'm saying, this is my bottom line, is because they're not reciprocating, is because the guys aren't being toxic.
Yeah, but okay, and what I'm saying, and I think I guess what I am trying to come to is
Mm-hmm.
We're right now at this point we're having a chicken or the egg argument.
Mm-hmm.
Did the women create the toxicity or did the toxicity create the women? I don't know
I
the answer to that. I don't
right.
know. But what I'm saying is we can't solve all the world's problems today. When you encounter that, there are women out there who will reciprocate your energy. When you're spending 2, 3, 4 weeks trying to break down this woman and commandeer her and she's not reciprocating your energy, you could have been stopped talking to her 3 weeks ago and met somebody else and tried your hand at that situation. But you
Mm.
put 3, 4 weeks into trying to hang out with this girl who don't give a damn about you. So when you encounter that, listen to the voice in your head that says, "Hey, man, she ain't interested in you, bro. Just because she texts you back here or there one day at a time for a couple of sentences, but she's otherwise not trying to maintain the flow of communication, that is a non-reciprocal energy red flag. Move it along and go the other way. Is there a likelihood that you'll run into another woman who's going to do the same thing? Sure. I'm not saying that this is a perfect world, but what you should do is maximize your opportunities for success. The longer you spend doing it with this one, the more time you're losing on the opportunity to not have to encounter that.
I hear you. I was just saying that I was covering all four flags, and so
Right. No, I hear it. I hear it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're covering the first one, which is cool, but all four of them are rooted in these women that are being shallow, cold, apathetic is the word you use. Is that because they are toxic? They are not well adjusted, and the reason why they're being that way towards somebody who's being normal is because they're looking for somebody to be toxic towards them. And you're not doing that. You shouldn't do that. And so that's why you're not getting the attention after 3 weeks or whatever, trying to, whatever. And so my whole thing is that there's a lot of people out there who appear well adjusted, but they have these things within them where they're seeking this toxicity and they don't know where the seed from that is coming from. Now I speculated on some of the seeds, but there's many places where they're digesting a lot of this content. So I mean,
Yeah.
I was saying it's more or less, covering all spectrums of all four of the red flags. We've got a lot of people out here that got problems, and so
Yeah.
and a lot of people hide their problems and make it seem like as though they don't have none. But once you try to
Yeah.
get to know them, you find out that there's something off about you.
No, no, no. For sure, all four are applicable. For sure,
Mhm,
definitely. But
mhm,
what where I'm coming from it is like, what's the first one that you're going to encounter in all likelihood? And what the thing is so interesting too. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. Like
mhm.
I've just run like all of that stuff is true, but you got a lot of women out here who aren't necessarily looking for a man to be toxic towards them, but they just have this profile in their mind of what it is that they're going after. And that profile could literally be anything. Maybe they want you to be a certain race or ethnicity. You got certain women out here, they might not admit it because it's a social faux pas. Maybe they only want to date white guys. Maybe they only want to date Latino guys. You got a lot of women who are like that. You got a lot of women who want to date a guy who's this height, who's this kind of tall, or who makes this kind of money, or whatever the case may be. I'm talking about stuff like that. But what they'll do is they'll give their number out to a black guy, or to a short guy, or to a guy who's not in shape. They'll do it mechanically. And they're not necessarily looking for a guy to be toxic, but because they've been programmed to do this stuff mechanically, they'll give out that information and they'll feign interest. But on the back end, you're not going to have that energy reciprocated, because when that girl goes home from the bar and wakes up the next day after meeting you and you text her to hang out, she's going to remember, well, I don't really like my guys that short. Or, well, I don't really like my guys if they're not coming from the same race or ethnicity as me. Or I kind of, I heard what he did for a living, and I'm not really, I'd rather date a guy who does this or does that. You just never know. It's literally a diaspora, and it ranges across the board. The and it's not, as a man, it's not for you to try and discover what that reasoning was. All you can do, and all that is within your power, is to recognize what red flags you're encountering, and to be strong and to be principled enough to walk away when you realize that you've encountered them. And I chose to kind of focus on the non-reciprocated energy because 9 times out of 10, it's the first one that you're going to run into. And it's oftentimes the one that we try to fight through the most because we just want to be able to try and get to know this girl because she looks so good or because of whatever the reason is. I don't know. But it's just important to be able to recognize that and walk off. But that's pretty much it. All of that, I don't disagree with much of what you said, but and again, I'm personalizing. I'm speaking for myself. I've run into plenty of women, and maybe they fool me real good, but I don't necessarily think that they were just like I look for toxicity in return. I think where I ran up against this and recognized that I was dealing with this resistance is because for whatever reason, physical standards, cultural standards, that was my roadblock. And I think a lot of people run into that too, where for whatever reason, you just don't fit the bill for what they're necessarily looking for, which is, it is what it is. We all have our preferences. So when you encounter it, when you encounter the non-reciprocated energy as a result of their lack of interest, just try your hand at something else.
There's more on the last topic. It's very similar. We'll
Yeah.
loop it back in. We'll loop it back in.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and cut it off from there. Regardless of the fact, I much appreciation and thanks to Asia Elaine for this content, because clearly there was a lot more meat on this bone than even I thought. And I do concur with her 4 red flags.
Yeah, Asia, I'm well adjusted over here. So
I believe she's married. She's married.
I'm well adjusted, Asia. It's at Dogon.
Are you really? I told you she's married, and you still said that. What does that really mean then at that point? You're well adjusted.
This is a joke. It's just a joke.
Man. Yeah. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the next topic, man. Appreciate that, and I do believe that those red flags are in existence. So next up.